Welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory. I'm your host, Gary Jacobs. Today's guest is Andy Herzman, who is one of the most talented videographers and producers that I've ever met. In fact, he is the producer for Long Island Backstory. And when I heard the story that he told me, I said, you know what, this is something that we need to talk about. And although he was a little bit reluctant, and you'll see why when we tell you why he's here, it's a story that really needs to be told. And although he's moved on in his life, really a lot of damage has been done to him. And what Andy did was he fought Cablevision, who was studios we're using and who airs our show, about getting a union. They didn't want to have a union come into Cablevision, and in fact, Andy Herzman supported the right to vote. But the interesting thing is, as he told me, he never even said whether he was going to vote yes or no for the union. He was just fighting for the right to have a vote, which is our right. So Andy, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
And tell me about your story. When did you work for Cablevision, and what did you do?
I started there back in 1984. I was an intern there, and this was before News 12 even existed. I was, working there, going to college to learn how to do television, and it was a great opportunity. They taught me everything what I needed to know to, be a professional, and so it was worth the experience. But then later on, News 12 started, and I started working with them, and again, it was a great experience, but. The problem was the pay wasn't very well,
Right.
And at the time it was about, when News 12 started, I think it was, 86 or something like that, or even later than that. I don't even remember when it first started, but basically, at the time McDonald's was actually paying more.
No, really?
Yeah, so we were, as a joke, we'd put, the want ads from McDonald's up on the bulletin board because, it was kind of a joke that the fact that we had to get a college education and be, trained for this type of work,
Right.
And and get paid less than someone who has no experience at all.
And I guess there really wasn't. They could get away with it because they pretty much had a monopoly,
right,
on
right.
Long Island. I mean, that was before there was Verizon. So I guess if it was cable news, it was Cablevision, and there was TV 10 and 55.
Right,
Was it
right.
I forgot the name of the station, but there was one of the local.
Right.
But as far as cable news, that was it.
Well,
So-
that's another reason why, not to get off topic, but the fact that you're doing this show and public access in general, you do point out that Cablevision right now has pretty much a monopoly on news.
Right.
They got Newsday and they got News 12, and we have more.
which is owned by which is the same company.
Same company, right?
So I would say probably 90-something% of people on Long Island get their news,
Right.
especially the local news, from
Right.
the Cablevision family.
That's the problem, and the fact that they do public access doesn't mean much because they're not doing it for their own benefit. Basically it's it's a franchise renewal agreement with the towns, and they have to do it. So
Right.
It's not something that they're doing that out of their own
the goodness of
their hearts. Exactly.
Right. Well, especially if they see this, they'll probably wish they didn't do it. So let's get back to the story. So how long were you at News 12?
Well, I was there. Let's see. About 5 years.
Okay.
So yeah, it was interesting because before that I worked for them in again like public access local programming, and it was a nice little place to work because at the time they were not even a public company. In other words, the stockholders didn't own them at all. It was privately owned by the Dolans. And I have to admit, at that time, the Dolans were really nice people. Chuck Dolan himself, the big guy, he would come in, shake my hand, ask me how I'm doing. Was very concerned about, and I thought I was part of the family. It was great. And as soon as they became a public company, and
The shareholders.
and the shareholders were number one, and everybody else just fell on the wayside.
So what happened?
Yeah, well, to get to the story, The News 12, as you know, is a local channel. When they first started, people made fun of them. They were just, it's a rinky-dink channel, and all the big city stations would laugh at them and whatnot, And one day, I think it was, what year was that? I don't have it in front of me to try to remember it. There was an Avianca plane crash in Cove Neck, which is right near where the Dolans live. And, it was a big news story. It was, plane crashes are always big. And News 12 satellite truck were the first ones on the scene because, we're local. They were local. And the city stations, by the time they got there, the roads up there are just so narrow they couldn't. It was almost impossible for them to get there. So News 12 was really the only one on the scene doing it live, and the camera people were there. And these are young guys, trying to get into the business, and here they are inside of fuselage with dead bodies and bleeding people, and the fire department trying to help them, and they're shining their camera lights on everybody and trying to help out. And I mean, what a traumatic experience.
At that point, were you the technical director? Was that your title?
At the time, I was, yeah. So, which is just another name for crew chief. Where
But obviously, they were happy with your performance, or they wouldn't have promoted you. Is really the point.
Oh yeah. But the thing was, the camera people deserve the credit. They were at the scene. They were doing amazing work. I mean, unbelievable. They were doing professional work, and this is their first TV job.
Right.
And here they are, all the other.
And they're getting a little bit less pay than McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, all the major networks in the city are taking their camera work and putting it on the big networks.
Right.
And because it was such a big story. And here they are, they deserved all the credit. And, so what happened was News 12 actually won an Emmy for that, which was unbelievable. They were like, so it's a little tiny station like that.
Right.
So when the big executives went and received the award, they didn't even mention the camera people,
right.
And it was devastating to these guys. They were like, what does it take to just thank the camera people?
Right.
Take 5 words,
Right.
You know what I mean? So they felt really, disappointed, and I mean, I can't blame them.
Right.
They were just,
especially when you're not getting a lot of money, you sort of
right.
live for the work that you do.
Right.
That's,
that was their moment. And they didn't
play.
even get a mention. So they got upset. They wanted to find out what they can do, because if they're not getting recognition, then they wanted more money, and
right.
that makes sense. You
right.
know. So they went to the union. I think it was IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Yeah. And they inquired about it. And when the news got around that they were into the union, then the rest of the people in News 12, the other technicians, they kind of like, well, don't leave us out,
Right.
They don't want to, if you're going to get more money, we want more money,
right.
And there's no guarantee you're going to get more money with,
right.
with a union, but it's at least your representation.
And you have the bargaining power.
Right,
of a union, professionals.
Right, and I don't even know.
And you have the right to it. It's America.
Well, that's the thing.
You have a right.
You do have a right to it, and that's why, But when News 12 heard about it, they did everything they possibly could to stop it. They hired this person, Margaret Albergo, who was, this big executive, and she illegally, interrogated people and sent them letters to their homes, and, made all kinds of, illegal promises.
I saw some letters saying, just because you get a union doesn't mean you're going to get more money.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Sort of like thinly veiled threats.
Oh yeah, I put pretty much all those letters on the internet, and there's a website. We can put it on the screen. It's like, I think it's unionbusting.yolsite.com, and if you can see all the letters there, it's just
right. But how did you become the person that they were fighting?
Yeah, well,
that's what I don't.
That's
the
point. Is funny because I really didn't have much to do with this whole thing. It's just I heard about it. I was just as much as any other person working there. But the technical director, the guy who actually pushes the buttons and is in charge of the technical side of it, is also known as the crew chief. So I had to do the scheduling for this crew. I was responsible. Like if something happened with, let's say, audio, the audio guy was responsible, but ultimately it was the technical director's job
right.
to make sure that didn't happen again, or fix it or whatever. So I was known as the crew chief. I was the one in charge of the crew, and so I was the scapegoat. I was the person,
or sending a message.
Well, yeah. Basically they assume that I'm the one that got them all charged up and whatnot, and. To be honest, I would have even actually voted no for the union. I didn't.
I remember you told me that. You said at the end of the day, I may have even voted
yeah.
no because you didn't want to pay the dues, but the option of having them there sometimes helps people
right.
get more money.
Exactly. Well, it to me it was like I understood what the job was. Cablevision's attitude was always, if you don't like it, you can go leave.
Right.
And well, free country, yeah, that's true. You can go leave. So
right.
basically, I kind of buy into that. You know, it's like if you don't like it, leave. You know,
Nobody's holding a gun to your head to work there.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, but the problem was.
So they fired you.
Yeah.
Based on what grounds?
Well, that's the thing. You know, all of a sudden it got very close to the union election, and they weren't making any progress in changing people's minds. It was still, you know, they weren't.
But are they allowed to even? Isn't there laws against union busting?
Oh, absolutely, and that's why, you know, it. We were young, you know. We just came out of college. We didn't know much about the law or anything. What our rights were. You know, the union really didn't help too much with that. You know, we didn't know where we stood, and you know, so we're sitting there and letting them do all this stuff to us. You know,
Right.
So yeah, finally, you know, it got really close to the union election, and they panicked, and the only way to stop the election was to just lay people off.
I think I saw approximately a week
about a week
they laid off around 40 people.
40 people in
and then
one shot.
they claim we have no money.
Right. So
That they weren't profitable.
Right, and that's what cracks me up because, you know, we had a big trial afterwards, and NLRB had a trial, took about a year, and
That's the National
National Labor Relations Board.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a government agency. They're supposed to protect us and keep our rights for starting unions. So, you know, just the timing of it was obvious that they were trying to stop a union. And, you know, just to fast forward, because the trial was kind of whatever, you know, and they were found guilty of unfair labor practices, which means, you know, the letters they sent out were illegal, you know, the threats, all that stuff. But
What about the firing people?
Yeah, well, that was the one thing that you know, they somehow got the judge to believe that they were losing money.
Right.
Now, I don't know if it was because you know, I don't really know how they did it. You know, maybe they messed with the paperwork and said, "Hey, look, we're really losing money." Or I don't know what they did. I mean, I wish I wasn't the lawyer. I was just the person that testified. However, what gets me is the fact that as soon as the trial was over, first of all, they sent out a letter to all the remaining employees. Okay, there's a guy named Asnara. I have that letter right here, as a matter of fact, and basically, it's him saying. You know, at the last sentence it says, "Needless to say, there's been no election at News 12."
So how did they actually stop the election?
Yeah, see, well, he was saying that, you know, he was bragging, basically, that the layoffs stopped the union.
But how does that stop the...
Because if you're not working there, you're not allowed to vote. So if you can't vote, your right to vote was taken away.
But what about those remaining people working there?
Well,
Why
they
couldn't they
stopped
vote?
the entire, because you know, the people that were supposed to, 40 people, you lose that, and now you know, the people left. What, you know, it's not going to be a fair vote anymore. Right. You know, because now they're intimidated. They're terrified. Oh, what if we, you know, we're going to get fired next? You know,
right. Well, that's a good. That'll work.
Yeah, you know. So this guy Joseph Asnara, he sends this letter out, you know, bragging. You know, as soon as the trial's over, he you know, because there's no double jeopardy. As soon as the trial's over,
No, from what I understand, right after it was over, they went out and like bought a helicopter.
Right, that's another thing. You know, I mean,
it was like a blatant.
Yeah, they buy a very expensive helicopter. You know,
well, even a cheap helicopter still got to be a lot of money.
Well, yeah, but you know, to maintain it, to fly it, all that costs tons of money.
Right.
Then they expanded, you know, the Bronx to New Jersey. You know, I mean, what company who's losing money does that? Right. So, and of course, they waited until the trial was over because they
it's done.
Right.
There's no going back.
They would have never wrote this letter like that or expanded, you know, while the trial was going on, because it's proof that they weren't losing money. You know, so it's very blatant what they did.
Right.
But again, you know, they were able to, you know, get the judge to see it on their side, and I'm just dumbfounded by it, you know, because it's like, whoa, you know.
I mean, did you ever reach out to the Dolans and say, you know, hey, whether through an email or a letter?
Well, you know, they're very hard people to get in touch with, obviously.
Right. Well, they're big, but I mean, it just seems like, like you said, the one in Dolan was Chuck Dolan was a good guy.
Well, he was a good guy, you know.
And I hear some of the other Dolans are
well,
good.
Yeah, you know, Pat Dolan,
people.
who's in charge of News 12. I mean, a lot of people like him. I don't really know him too well, but I've actually you know, seen him on Facebook, and you know, people write to him and look highly of him, and you know, that's fine. But you know, the person who's in charge of Cablevision now, which is James Dolan, you know, Chuck's it's his son basically. But you know, he is just, to me, he looks like a spoiled brat. You know, that he got everything handed to him.
Right.
You know, used to be on alcohol and drugs and things, and you know, this guy. He's like a spoiled brat. He owns the Knicks now, and he's always,
Well, he does own a lot.
Yeah, he does, but it was handed to him.
Yeah.
He didn't earn any of
Right.
this stuff, and as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it was just given to him.
Right.
And so what I tried to do once was, since I was a Cablevision stockholder, I bought stock while I was an employee there, and I went to one of their stockholders meeting because I wanted to really, confront.
So there's a way of letting them know. So,
I mean, I was there. And I raised my hand and I just asked him. I said, what do you have against unions? What's the problem? And he knew that I had a website that had all this information on there, and he was really upset about it, to say the least. Okay, so when he found out who I was, his face lit up, and he went, oh well. First thing he asked me was, "Are you a stockholder?" And I said, "Of course. That's why I'm here. I was invited." And he goes, "Well, why would you put that kind of stuff on the internet? If you're a stockholder, it's just self-defeating, And this shows you how ridiculous, Because I told him, I said, I only have one share.
Right. It's not going to really. Firing you actually that caused you a financial hardship.
Well, exactly. So it's like the $20 for that one share is worth me telling you what's on my mind. I mean,
And I know you're a big proponent of freedom of speech and
Yeah.
freedom of the press, and that's why you help out with Long Island Backstory
Sure,
and
all that
FIT-TV and several other
I'm
shows. You're a
exactly.
big supporter of freedom of speech, and
Right,
you
right.
believe in that.
Absolutely,
So,
and that's what News 12 should be. The same thing. I mean, they're a news organization. They live off of free speech,
Right.
and then they took away
away our free speech.
my opportunity to vote.
Right.
I mean, come on now. It's like it's good for you guys, but not for me.
Right.
So I'm at the stockholders meeting. I'm not the one that even mentioned the website. James Dolan did. So he kind of like
Promoted it.
Yeah, he promoted it, and afterwards, all the stockholders would come to me. Oh, I want to know more about this website. You know, so this he's really not that bright, I guess. I mean, he really.
Or his anger took over.
Well, yeah, basically. I mean, it's pretty funny.
And then I used to being challenged, I'm sure.
Well, that's
especially by
another thing.
you're not a big law firm. You're not a rich
No.
guy, and
Right.
you're just standing up for what's right.
Right. So this whole website thing was a interesting thing because they really didn't want that to become public. They don't want people to know about this stuff, you know. So they had lawyers write letters to me, real nasty letters, and to telling me I may be breaking the copyright rule by putting up their letters, And the way he worded it was like maybe, it's like like
trying to intimidate you
Yeah,
because they know you're not a lawyer, and
Right.
And listen, you could be intimidated. Well, you weren't, but who wouldn't be? You have a big. Cablevision, behind their lawyers.
Right. So they kind of broke the law, and they did break the law, and I didn't break any laws. But, these lawyers, like you said, they're trying to intimidate me. They're using their
logo,
power.
their fancy
it's like,
words, and
it's like
legalese, and.
Right. I'm a lawyer, and I know what I'm talking about, and I'm telling you're breaking the law, and stop doing it.
But you didn't back down.
No, because, one of the reasons why was because I was working at Court TV at the time, and a lot of the lawyers there, they're very big, high, prominent lawyers, and they looked at it and laughed and said, oh, come on, just, this is ridiculous. It's free speech. You're allowed to put that stuff up.
Right.
It's public knowledge. But it got them so upset that one day I got my boss at Court TV came up to me and said, Cablevision called, and they want that stuff down. They want that, and I felt, like, wow, they're going after me,
Right.
And my boss kind of hinted, like, well, they could take Court TV off of Cablevision. They have that power.
Right.
And now I felt like, geez, now I got to lose my free speech and take the website down, or else, they potentially can take Court TV off the off the air. And I'm like, now it's getting to a higher level.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's how much they cared about stopping this.
Well, they don't. I saw some of the stuff you put on the website, which
Yeah.
it wasn't really. From what I saw, it wasn't really much of your opinion as it was just the fact. Here's the letters that were sent to me. Here's the letters that were posted.
Right, and
I
put
at
the
work.
the
Newsday
trial.
article. I think it was an article. I guess.
Yeah, there was a
Newsday
Newsday article. It said News 12 busted union. According to the NLRB. That's why the trial was started to begin with. I just put stuff up there. Even the entire verdict of the trial I put up there. So nothing really as far as my opinion's concerned.
Right.
but they just didn't want the public to know about this stuff, you know. And it's funny because when people watch News 12 and Cablevision and they look at, they love it, and I'm not saying it's a bad, it's a service, right? But when you know what happens behind the scenes, how they treat their people, what they do, they intimidate people, the cost that goes into this, making this channel happen, okay, behind the scenes, I mean, it's just unbelievable, and the more you watch News 12, the more you support that, maybe unknowingly or unwillingly, whatever, but people should know what happens.
Well, I think it's important to tell the story, what's going on, and I don't know how they're paying people now.
Well, I don't know either. I mean, it's probably a little bit more to keep them quiet,
right?
But, they're not going to become millionaires, obviously,
Right. So, and Cablevision, certainly, they're making money. I mean, they're buying sports teams and
they're always making money, But it's the funny part is, it's like, you got this giant company, and I went to a News 12 reunion. I wasn't even really officially invited, but they said anybody who worked there could come. So
that's you.
And I heard about it, so I showed up. And while I was there, you had Charles Dolan on the stage, and he was making a speech, and he was actually bragging about how he started Cablevision by breaking the law, by putting cables along the East River illegally without any permission, right? And the way they found out about it was there was some kind of I think it was a bank robber or something, and the cops were chasing him. He jumped into the East River, and somebody took a picture of him jumping, and there in the picture you see these cables. And it came to light because it was in the big picture, and they go, where are those cables? What is that?
Right.
And they found out that it was the illegal cables from Cablevision, and at that point it was already done. And all the big wigs in the city, let them do it. It's no big deal. It's already done. It serves a purpose, whatever. Right. And they get away with breaking laws. And that's what they constantly do. They're breaking laws for their own benefit, and they get away with it. And that's what really gets me upset. And here he is on the stage bragging about it.
Right.
I'm looking at him like, you're proud of this? This is something you tell everybody? And wow, how do you start a business by breaking the law?
Right. And then brag about it.
And then brag about it and be proud of something like that, Come on.
Well, maybe that's what started this whole thing of thinking, hey, we can do whatever we want and get away with it.
Well, the more they do it, because I'm not the only case. I mean, I've read a lot of different, other people who tried to start unions after us, in the Bronx and whatnot. And, even Al Sharpton got involved at one case, in what part, I think it was Cablevision, the Bronx, for the installers out there, and it's got, they just, the more they get away with it, the more emboldened they get, and the more they do it, and it's just on and on and on. And it just cracks me up because it's like, what is so terrible about a union?
Right.
I mean, they bought Madison Square Garden, which already had a union, and then they had to deal with that.
Right.
And
well, listen, large companies, I mean, in general, don't like dealing with you. If you have a choice, a large profitable company, you don't want to deal with the union. But if you treat your employees well, then you really have nothing to worry about. With the union.
Exactly.
But are the unions behind you, or do you think? I mean, you mentioned that the unions didn't really do much to support you, although they wanted you. Do you think that they felt the pressure of
that's a good question.
Why wouldn't they get behind you? Because unions are falling apart.
They are, and that's, I think one of the reasons was because they don't stand up either.
Right.
It's funny. I went to them. I said, "Can you help me find other work?" They found me one freelance job at HBO. I worked there one day because of them, and that was it. I mean, they don't try to help you find work.
Right.
They just want you to pay the dues, and
which is funny. Like you said, you probably wouldn't have even voted for it.
That's what
anyway.
I knew. Yeah, I knew about that. I was like, you know what? They don't really help much either. So, I mean, Cablevision treated me well, except for the pay. They gave all kinds of great benefits. Free lunches all the time, even for Christmas. They don't do that anymore, but for Christmas they gave us, turkeys and alcohol and.
So you didn't, other than the pay, you didn't really have a problem.
No, I mean, I love the working conditions.
You weren't a disgruntled employee who was, hey, let's get after these guys.
Right, exactly.
You were actually the opposite, but because you were management, they wanted to send a message, and you were just.
Well, that's another thing, because I wasn't really technically management. I wasn't allowed to fire or hire anybody.
Right.
But
it was just sending a message.
Yeah, it was just like you're in charge of the crew, even though I technically I was just part of the crew.
Right.
But yeah, it was sending a message like, don't even try this stuff. It's like.
Right. So what advice do you have now to people who are, number one, at Cablevision?
Yeah, well.
What do you do? I mean, I know we spoke to somebody else, and I wanted to see if somebody else wanted to come on the show, and basically the message that we got back was, hey, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Right.
And I think it worked.
Well, it did work in the long run.
It didn't silence you.
No.
You're working now, so.
Right.
Right. But you didn't want to be quiet about this.
No, it's really annoying because actually it destroyed my career in a way because I'm not allowed to work at non-union shops now because the word is out that this guy tries to start unions, which is not even true.
Which is why there's these laws against union busting because you can get blackmailed, blacklisted.
Blacklisted, right.
Where they say, hey, keep this guy out. Listen, of course they all talk. It's a small industry,
right.
And if the Dolans fired you for quote doing a union,
right.
That's not good.
Exactly. Well, they'll never admit to that, obviously. But,
of course.
But yeah, when I try to get jobs at non-union places, I mean, I am treated like garbage. I mean, I had an interview at CNN once, and it was a phone interview, and I didn't get a word in edgewise. In 30 seconds, the guy says, "Oh well, we don't need people like you. We're changed now, and even though you directed for us, you're not qualified." And then he hung up on me, and I went, "Whoa!"
Right.
I didn't get a word in edgewise. I mean, it's obvious. It's like they hear my name and they lose their minds over me.
I mean, if there are any lawyers out there watching us, is there anything a lawyer can do to take the case and say, hey, wrongful termination?
I've been to lawyers that are terrified. They know.
Well, they're going up against something big.
Yeah. There's no. Cablevision's huge.
Right.
So the problem is, they have so much power, so much money, and you can't fight them. It's even the government.
Right.
NLRB went against them, and I mean, I really don't know what.
Well, who knows if the government's really going against them because they are the ones who pretty much gave them a monopoly.
Well, that's
whatever the government is, with local government, state government. I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean it just didn't make any sense, that whole verdict. But what am I going to do? It's like I'm just a person. I got the only thing that was nice was I got to testify and tell my side of the story, and even in the judge's verdict, my name was in there, and it says he took my side of whatever I said. As far as what my testimony was, which was basically that they promised to close the whole place down if a union came in.
Right.
But again, it's like even though they were found guilty of those things, all they had to do was hang up a piece of paper for a month that said we will not intimidate people and blah blah blah, and not do what they just did.
Right.
And they turn around and do it anyway. So.
Well, listen, it's never over. I know you said, am I beating a dead horse? But then, you went back and said, it's a story that needs to be told because people just watch News 12 and say, hey, there's no problems, everything is great.
Yeah, it looks all great and everything on the outside.
But in the back of everyone's mind, they still say, first of all, my Cablevision, my bill is so damn high.
That's another thing.
At least if you could justify it and say, well, you know what, they pay their people well, they're a union shop.
Right.
They're none of those things. And we still do have freedom of speech. Although, listen, as you can see, when somebody wants to silence you, they're going to do it.
Right.
But people like you standing up for what's right, for our rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it cost you your career.
Pretty much, but
but it's not over. You're a young guy. People watching this, hey, somebody out there may say, "I'm going to hire this guy." Maybe a union is going to watch it, and say, "Hey, we're going to get behind him." Maybe an attorney. You just never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Our audience is growing, and now not only will it be showing on TV, but it'll be on the internet for forever.
Exactly.
Unless we get a letter from one of the Dolans lawyers telling us that we must take this down because we no longer have the right to freedom of speech.
Exactly.
But I think they know not to mess with Andy Herzman. Andy, thanks so much for coming, and thank you for all you do for supporting the rights to free speech.
My
I really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you also. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us at another edition of Long Island Backstory. We'll see you next week.